In October 2014, a 47-year-old hiker from Las Vegas uploaded a video to his YouTube channel, Snakebit MG. In it, he can be seen walking through a remote canyon in the mountains north of the city, talking to camera between long stretches of rough terrain. He points out an old abandoned mine shaft at one point, steps close to the edge, looks down.
Show you down inside that hole. It goes way, way, way down in there. Let me see if I can...
The video is called M Cave Hike, and the reason he went back out there was because of a comment he'd written months earlier that thousands of people had seen and couldn't stop thinking about. Kenny Veach had been hiking the Nevada desert alone for over 20 years. He went days at a time with minimal supplies. On his channel, he documented his solo desert trips. Not a big channel, just a guy who loved being out there. Earlier in 2014, Kenny left a comment on a YouTube video about an Area 51 technician's son. He wrote, "One time during one of my hikes out by Nellis Air Force Base, I found a hidden cave. The entrance to the cave was shaped like a perfect capital M. I always enter every cave I find, but as I began to enter this particular cave, my whole body began to vibrate. The closer I got to the cave entrance, the worse the vibrating became. Suddenly, I became very scared and hightailed it out of there. That was one of the strangest things that ever happened to me." The comment spread fast. Most people thought he was making it up. Others pushed him to go back and film it. One reply stood out from the rest. "No, do not go back there. If you find that cave entrance, don't go in. You won't get out." Kenny went back anyway. That's what the M Cave Hike video captured. Him spending hours moving through that mountain range looking for the entrance, describing what it looked like, saying that this time he had his 9mm on him and was going inside the moment he found it.
So I hope I can find it again. And if I do, I'm going in there. I'm gonna put on my light and take my gun out and walk in there, see if I find anything. We'll see.
He hiked the entire canyon and came out the other side without finding it. The comments were brutal. People called him a liar. He replied that he would go back a third time. On November 10th, 2014, Kenny told his girlfriend he was heading out for a short overnight trip. He left his video camera at home. He drove out to the trailhead and set off into the mountains. He never came back. His girlfriend waited. When several days passed with no word, she reported him missing on November 17th. Search and rescue didn't launch until November 22nd, nearly 2 weeks after he was last seen. Over 30 volunteers searched the area on foot 3 separate times. A helicopter went up. His car was found at the trailhead exactly where she said it would be. The only trace of Kenny was his cell phone, discovered near an abandoned mine shaft that appears in the background of the M Cave Hike video, around a 4-hour walk from where he parked. Police lowered a camera down the shaft. Nothing. No camping gear, no other belongings, and no sign of him anywhere. The searches eventually stopped. After the video started circulating and people began speculating, a comment appeared under the M Cave Hike video from a woman identifying herself as his girlfriend, Sharyun. She wrote about who he was, what they did together out in the desert, and what he had told her in the weeks before he disappeared. She said he had battled depression for years and refused any kind of help for it. She said his father had died when Kenny was in his early 20s, and she said that when she had asked him directly about his state of mind not long before he vanished, he told her, "If I decide to do it, no one will ever find me." She believed he left his phone behind deliberately and that he had no intention of filming anything on that last trip. But what I found most disturbing was the possibility that all of this may have put even more pressure on Kenny. After sharing the story, he suddenly found himself trying to prove it to thousands of strangers online, people he would never meet, people who had already decided he was lying. And I can't help but wonder if, at some point, proving them wrong became just as important as finding the cave itself. Online communities have gone back and forth on this for years. Some point to the terrain, the hidden mine shafts, and the sheer scale of the area as reason enough for a solo hiker to never make it back. Others keep returning to the vibrating cave story, the proximity to Nellis Air Force Base, and the one comment warning him not to go back. Nobody has confirmed finding the M-shaped entrance he described. His channel is still up. The M Cave Hike has millions of views. In the last few minutes of it, Kenny is heading back toward his truck, worn out, talking about coming back out to try again. On April 1st, 2014, Chris and Lisanne took dozens of photos on a hiking trail in Panama. The early ones are bright and cheerful, the two of them smiling, the kind of pictures you'd expect from two friends on a graduation trip. The last normal photo was taken at 1:54 in the afternoon. It shows Chris crossing a small stream and glancing back over her shoulder. After that, there are no more daytime photos. The next ones on the camera were taken 7 days later at around 1:30 in the morning in complete darkness. Chris and Lisanne were 21 and 22 years old, both from Amersfoort in the Netherlands. They had finished university and planned a 6-week trip to Panama. They arrived in March 2014 and spent their first 2 weeks in Bocas del Toro before moving to Boquete, a mountain town in Chiriquí province where they stayed with a host family. On the morning of April 1st, they had breakfast, then set off for the El Pianista Trail, a popular half-day hike that climbs through the cloud forest to a viewpoint at the Continental Divide. They took the host family's dog with them. They carried a small blue backpack with their phones, a Sony camera, and an umbrella. They expected to be back for dinner. The dog came home alone that afternoon. The photos show they reached the viewpoint at the top of the trail around 1 p.m. However, instead of turning back, they continued past it, down the other side of the divide into terrain that is unmaintained and significantly more dangerous. That last photo at 1:54 was taken somewhere on that descent. After that, nothing. At 4:39 that same afternoon, Lisanne's phone attempted to call 112, the Dutch emergency number. No signal. Minutes later, Chris's iPhone tried the same, also nothing. Over the following 10 days, the two phones were switched on and off repeatedly to conserve battery, making over 77 emergency call attempts between them. Only one ever connected, and it lasted 2 seconds before cutting out. On April 3rd, they figured out the correct Panamanian emergency number was 911 and started calling that instead. The phones showed that at least one of them was alive and conscious for roughly 10 days after they disappeared, managing battery levels, checking for signal, trying everything they could. Then on April 5th, something strange happened. Chris's iPhone logged 77 failed attempts to enter the PIN in a single day. Not one correct attempt, just the same wrong code over and over, 77 times. The formal search only began on April 2nd. By the time Dutch search teams and helicopters were brought in, days had already been lost. Weeks went by with nothing. On June 14th, a local woman near the village of Alto Romero found the blue backpack on the bank of the Culebra River, several miles from where the girls were last photographed. Inside, neatly arranged and wrapped in a plastic bag, were both phones, camera, and all the other items. Everything was intact, the electronics still functional. The bag itself was dry and in good condition, despite 10 weeks of rainy season weather near a river. When investigators pulled the photos off the Sony camera, that's when things got truly difficult to explain. Between 1:29 and 4:15 on the morning of April 8th, 7 days after the last daytime photo, the camera had been used to take 90 flash photos in complete darkness. Most are black or show dense jungle vegetation lit up by the flash for a split second, but scattered through the sequence are others that are clearly deliberate. A branch with red plastic bags tied to it, held up like a flag. A rock with a Pringles can and toilet paper arranged on top of it, what looks like a makeshift SOS signal. And then one photo that has been studied and debated more than any other in this case, a tight close-up of the back of a head of wet, dark blonde hair. To the right of the part, running down toward the temple, is what appears to be a trail of liquid. Most analysts believe this is the back of Chris Kremer's head. There is also photo 509. The camera's memory card showed images numbered consecutively from 508 to 510. Photo 509 is missing. Forensic recovery was attempted. The file had been permanently overwritten and could not be restored. Nobody has been able to determine when it was deleted or why. In the weeks after the backpack was found, a concentrated search of the riverbanks turned up fragments of remains. Only around 10% of each girl's skeleton was ever recovered. Some fragments were found wedged above the waterline in tree trunks, in spots that water alone couldn't have put them. A boot with a foot inside was found. Panamanian authorities officially closed the case as a hiking accident. The most probable scenario, according to Dutch forensic investigators, was that one of them suffered a serious fall in the jungle. The other stayed with her, and they eventually passed away from exposure, with remains later scattered by the river. However, the families have never accepted this. Chris's father has spoken publicly for years about his belief that the two women encountered someone on that trail. The condition of the backpack has never been satisfactorily explained. On August 19, 2016, Justin Alexander posted a video to his YouTube channel, Adventures of Justin. In it, he can be seen sitting inside a cave deep in the Indian Himalayas, talking about silence and the search for truth. Outside the cave, somewhere below, the Parvati Valley stretches out through the cloud forest. He had been living there for weeks. A few days after filming it, he set off deeper into the mountains. He was never seen again. Justin was 35 years old from Florida, and by most accounts, someone who had built a life that most people would envy. He walked away from all of it at 32. He sold his belongings, bought a motorcycle, and started traveling. For the next few years, he moved through Southeast Asia, Central Asia, and Nepal, documenting everything on his blog and his channel under the name Adventures of Justin. He carved his walking sticks into flutes. He slept in hammocks and meditated for hours. He wrote on his website, "I am running from a life that isn't authentic, running towards wonder, awe, and the things that make me feel vibrantly alive." By August 2016, he had made his way to the Parvati Valley in Himachal Pradesh, India. The valley has a reputation that follows it around. Since the 1990s, at least 24 foreign travelers have disappeared there without explanation, enough that locals have taken to calling it the Valley of Death. Justin knew this. He mentioned it in his posts, and by some accounts, the idea of it fascinated rather than deterred him. He spent 3 weeks living alone in a cave near the village of Kalga, 4 hours walk from the nearest road. In that time, he befriended a Naga sadhu, an ascetic holy man named Satyanarayan. The two made a plan together. They would trek to Mantalay Lake, a glacial holy site at over 13,000 feet near the source of the Parvati River. It is a place very few people ever reach. The trail is unmarked, brutal, and the weather in September is unpredictable. Before leaving, Justin wrote a blog post announcing the trek. At the end of it, he wrote, "I should return mid-September or so. If I'm not back by then, don't look for me." On September 3rd, 2 trekkers who had met Justin earlier in the valley ran into him on a remote part of the trail. They took photos. He appeared fine, told them he had separated from the sadhu and continued walking alone toward the higher mountains. That was the last confirmed sighting of Justin Alexander Shetler. The sadhu returned to the village. Justin did not. Nobody raised the alarm immediately. It wasn't until early October, after mid-September had passed with no contact, that his family and friends pushed for a formal search. Indian police, local mountaineers, and the Indo-Tibetan Border Police launched an operation. Helicopters scanned the high-altitude terrain. Nothing was found. Police arrested the sadhu on charges of suspected abduction and murder. He was held for questioning. He admitted Justin had trekked with him, but gave no useful information about what had happened. On October 21st, 2016, he was found dead in his cell, having taken his own life. With the only person of interest gone, the investigation effectively stalled. 2 months after Justin disappeared, a shepherd found his green backpack half buried in sand on the bank of the Parvati River, about 10 kilometers downstream from where he was last seen. Inside were his passport, cash in both rupees and dollars, and other personal items. Nothing of value had been taken. On the camera's memory card was the last photo ever taken of him, a handstand on the edge of a rocky cliff, his signature pose, the mountains stretching out behind him. The Indian police closed the case as an accident. His family has never accepted that. His mother and those closest to him point to the guide's changing story, the suspicious condition of the backpack found so far downstream, and the fact that Justin was a trained survivalist with wilderness first response credentials and years of extreme solo travel behind him. A simple accident, they argue, doesn't fit. As of today, Justin Alexander Shetler remains legally missing. No death certificate has been issued. His channel, Adventures of Justin, is still up. The cave video is still there. He looks at ease in it, sitting in the dark with the mountains somewhere outside, talking about what it means to find stillness.